Hi, this is Drew. I'm Diane Mitsch Bush's Field Director for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, and I'm going to show you how to use a virtual phone bank. Now, when you first click on the link, you're going to be brought to this screen. After hitting Get Started, it's going to take you here. If you've ever used a virtual phone bank before, you should have a login. If you don't remember your password, you can click here. If you haven't used a virtual phone bank before, you're going to click Create an Action ID account, punch in a little bit of info, and then you'll be right on your way. Now, after that, you can hop right into the phone bank. Now, this is my name and a fake phone number because this isn't a real voter file. We don't have county, party, or precinct filled in. Typically, you would also see the age and the gender of the person you're talking to right here. And in the case that there are other voters in the household, you'll see their info right here. So if you end up talking to someone at that number, but isn't the person right here, and you want to mark them down, you can just click on their name. That should be right here on the screen. Now, I'll go first through for people who have phone bank before, but just haven't used a virtual phone bank. Until about I want to say the 25th, all of the phone banks we're going to be calling are going to be caucus site specific. So everyone you're calling goes to the same caucus site. They might be a different precinct, but they'll all be at the same caucus site. And you'll see that caucus site right here. If it says general phone bank or doesn't include this information right here, the precinct location should be listed as one of the options here. It just hasn't been added into the system yet. So for right now, we're doing site-specific phone banks. For those who have phone banked, this menu should look very familiar, right? If you can't reach them, that's not home. Refused is, if they hung up on you or anything. Deceased, moved, all very self-explanatory. Wrong number, right? If nothing goes through or the person you called doesn't live there. Those are pretty much the options you're going to need. And if you click not home, right, that should just direct you on to the next call. One thing I note, if you talk to the person, but they're just busy at the moment, and we're going to want to call them back, it's fine to just do not home. Not home is a general, we'll call them back. We'll put them through to the second round, right? Refused, deceased, wrong number, that's going to take them off the list. So that's pretty much how you should think about those options. Now, in the case that you could reach them, the first question we're going to have is, do they support Diane? Strong Diane, lean Diane, undecided, lean against, strong against, right? And most of the time, you're either going to talk to someone who supports Diane, who you convince to support Diane, or someone who is undecided. So most of the time, you're going to be in these three boxes. Every so often you'll get someone who doesn't support the campaign, but generally speaking, we really want to be between strong Diane and lean Diane, but you'll get some ones that are hard to persuade, so that'll be undecided. If they do support Diane, we're going to want to tell them about the caucus. The caucus option is right here. Now, if they can caucus, that's yes. If they can't, it's maybe. If they might be able to, it's maybe, and then if they can't, that's no. And then the last, if they're particularly enthusiastic, is the volunteer question. Again, yes, maybe, no. But I would say this for people who seem, really interested in the campaign, if you're going to ask that question. That's the general information for people who have phone banked before. After you fill in this info, you'll see a little button at the bottom. My face is currently blocking it, but the button will basically just say move on to the next voter. And then you can go ahead and do that. There should also probably be a skip option if for whatever reason you want to skip the person you're on. But that's the general gist of how to use a virtual phone bank. And that will just bring you to the next voter. Now, for people who haven't phone banked before, I'm just going to run through this script. Basically, you'll call them up. You'll say your name. Hi, this is Drew. I'm with Diane Mitsch Bush's campaign for Congress, and you're going to ask if they're familiar with the campaign. If they are, you should ask them if they support the campaign. If they're not, if they sound, generally a little uninformed, you're going to want to move into the persuasion section, which is right here. So we have it all written out. Some people do this differently. If you're not an experienced phone banker and you want to stick to the script, that is perfect. We lay out 3 main issues: healthcare, public lands and the environment, equal rights for women, and we just ask which is most important to them, and then we have the little spiel for each of those. After we get through that, we're going to say, does that sound good to you? Most of the time they will say yes, and we will say, great, can we count on your support? If they're still undecided, you can direct them to the website. If they say they are a supporter, then that is something we mark right here. And of course, in the case in which we ask if they're a supporter and they just say no, we have this option right here. And we just, move on with the conversation. We're looking to persuade people. We're not looking to argue with them. If they are a supporter, we want to talk to them about the caucus. So the caucus is happening for everyone on March 7th at 2 p.m. And again, the location should be up here, or if it's not there, it will be added as one of the options here as precinct location. Now, the caucus this year is a little confusing. People are for the presidential race, it's a primary, which has a lot of people thinking that we just don't have a caucus anymore. But for Senate and everything below that, there's a caucus. So what's going to happen on March 7th is people are going to show up to caucus for a Senate candidate. And after that happens, delegates are going to be selected. These delegates go to county assembly, and then from there go to an assembly that happens to decide who gets on the ballot for this congressional district, right? So we want to make sure the delegates that are selected support Diane, because that's what's going to get us on the ballot and win us the primary and then win us the general election. So that is so basically the people who go there, we want them to either volunteer to be a delegate or to ask the people who do volunteer to be a delegate if they support Diane and vote accordingly. So we have a spiel here that essentially explains this to voters in as few words as possible. It is very confusing. We acknowledge that right here in the script, but this is the really crucial part. And then we ask them if that makes sense to them. Now, if you have caucused before, if you're experienced with this, right, you might have your own way of doing it. But this is just some language that we have that seems to have generally worked with voters we've talked to. If they can't caucus, we have that option right here. If maybe, you can gauge how much is worth explaining to them, right? If they're like, I think I should be able to make the caucus, that's a maybe, but still go through the explanation of what actually happens at the caucus. And then there's just the volunteer question, right? Would they be willing to call voters on the campaign's behalf? If they check mark yes, then that will show up in the system for me and I will reach out to them. That's pretty much the entire way it works. If you have any questions about this, you can reach out to me. You can see my first name right here, which is what my email address is. It's drew@dianeforcolorado.com, and I will be happy to respond to your questions about this as promptly as I can. The last part I want to say is these links that we have are open. Anyone who has the link, right, can access this phone bank, right? So if you know other people who would be happy to make calls for the campaign, feel free to share it with them, but don't put it out publicly. I wouldn't say post it on your Facebook or your Twitter or your Instagram, right? Because this is how the campaign collects data about caucus goers. So share it with people you trust, share it with people who'd be happy to make phone calls for the campaign. That would be phenomenal. But just be aware of, of what the link means. Anyway, that is everything I have to say about this. Thank you so much for volunteering for the campaign. It really is the engine that drives this operation, and have fun dialing. Thanks so much.